He was a giant of Saturday night telly, probing celebrity interviews, and most of all, a great journalist. Sir Michael Parkinson joined me in his favourite pub to talk about his connection with Nottingham and plenty of showbiz gossip. Goes without saying what a pleasure this is, Sir Michael. Thank you so much for chatting to us.
Pleasure.
And you've got strong links with Nottingham, strong links with the John Van Gee Centre, and we'll come on to those, if you don't mind, in a few minutes.
Sure.
But first, tell us a little bit about this pub. There's a reason why we're meeting here.
Because I prefer to be interviewed in pubs rather than anywhere else now, having spent a great part of my life in them. This is owned by my pub, but this is owned by my son Nicholas, my middle boy, who's trained as a chef at the Savoy and went to Australia, had a successful career, came home, and we'd always talked about buying a pub together. So we bought this place. It was ramshackle, run down, and it was a proper boozer. And Nick transformed it, and within a sort of 4 weeks or so, within about 4 years or so, he got a Michelin star, which we've now had for about 10 years and still have. And so he transformed it from this little village pub and derelicts and down and out into this place now. Let
me talk to you about your art, which is the interview, the chat show, because that's changed, hasn't it?
It's a talk show.
Talk show.
Thank you. I mean, a chat show's something else. A chat show's what you see nowadays.
Well, exactly. That's kind of my point. In that there was a survey carried out last year of what viewers value in a talk show.
Yeah.
And 54% of them said it was the host. They watched it for the host.
Yes.
Only 44% said it was the interviewee.
Yes.
Now, does that disappoint you or does that flatter you?
I think it depends why the host is popular. I mean, some hosts are popular because they're funny, and they're not interviewers, they're comedians, and that's their job, to go on there and tease a laugh from wherever he can and be funny. And be also, too, the centre of the show and not the sidekick. You see, I've always regarded my job as being invisible, that I go on and I set it going, and then you forget me because I'm in the background. And when a talk show for me worked, it was when I actually could get 3 or 4 people talking together and forgetting I was there. And I could move back and look at it and survey it and only come in when I was needed, not when I felt, oh, I've not been on for 2 minutes. I've got to tell a funny story now. I mean, that's what happens. So I think you have to have an ego to appear on television, but I don't think you would let it swamp the interview. So I think that style of interviewing, which was prevalent when I came in, I mean, if you think of Russell Harty, myself, Mike Aspel, a couple of other people, we're doing that more or less the same kind of job. What happened was the American system came in, whereby you had to be a comedian to do the job. And some did it very well, and some did not reach the heights, let us say. And I think what we've lost is the interview where we learn about an interviewee who feels like disclosing something to a skilled interviewer. You are, when you're the comedian and doing a talk show, you're at the mercy of yourself, in a sense. You're as funny or as bad as you are. When you're doing a talk show, the kind of show that we did, not just myself, other people too, you're actually doing an interview. So you have to rely on the interview, and you have to rely on the 2 or 3 guests you've picked to have something in common so that they don't sit there like a banana. So you know in your research that, that person's just said that, I know that, and then you go.
Is it true that you chose to have David Beckham on at the same time as George Best so that you could show David Beckham what not to become?
Well, no, it wasn't that at all. I mean, George is one of my oldest and dearest friends, and I love George, and I miss him till today. And the tragedy of George was that he died an alcoholic, and he died a very miserable death, as people do. I saw him in hospital, and it was wretched, because I remembered him as this extraordinarily beautiful young kid. And when David came along, I saw echoes of semblance of George and David, too. And I got on well with him. I liked him immensely, a nice lad. And so I just thought it'd be great to bring them together. And Georgie, who wasn't fulsome in his praise of fellow professionals often, thought that he was the goods. He thought that Beckham was a very fine player. And, of course, there were lessons to be learned by both. And so we brought them together, and they got on very well together. And George never learned from anybody. George would smile and say, yeah, that's right, and do exactly the opposite. And David's a bit more resolute than that, and a bit more sensible than George was. He's not as good a player as George was, George was a genius. David isn't that. He's a good player. David, I think, looked at George and decided certain things. I hope that he did. And so far, it's worked out very well for him. A few million quid.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Just staying with football, Nottinghamshire has an enduring love affair with Brian Clough.
A Yorkshireman.
Indeed, yeah.
Yes.
And
I just thought I'd point that out to you.
You interviewed him many times, and you wrote a wonderful piece about him when he died in the Telegraph, where you described him as a pickle of a man.
A pickle.
A combination of so many different things.
Yes,
just share your thoughts on old Big Ed.
Well, old Big Ed, I first saw him play football to start with. People forget he was a damn fine footballer. By God, he was. An awful injury. And then the legend, the myth of Brian Clough began. Brian's problem was, and it's like George's problem, he became an alcoholic. And that's so distorting. And so the person becomes so removed from what they really are. And it's sad to see that happen to somebody who, you knew was a very agreeable, funny, talented man going down a road which can only lead one way. He was one of the two people that I had to judge about going on the show or not. He arrived for one show, and my producer said to me, "Look, I'm not sure. He's a bit drunk. I'm not sure how drunk." And so my job was to go down and see him, talk to him, and make the assessment. I mean,
so he was borderline, not broadcastable.
He was borderline. He was actually over the top. He wasn't broadcastable. But, I hated that interview. I love that interview.
But you put him on, didn't you?
Well, let me just say this. The BBC's biggest mistake, I think, and the cruelest time I ever saw an interview happen was when they put George Best on Terry Wogan's show. I mean, they should not have allowed him on. That was wrong. But so we used to have tried to safeguard. And I just went in the room and I said, "Brian, you've got a chance." I said, "The choice, in the next 10 minutes you're sober up or you're not on." I said, "I'm telling you." I said, "I could do the worst thing. I could put you on and just sit there and look at you and let the camera look at you." I said, "What are you going to do about that?" "You're going to tell the missus when you get home." And he started laughing and he said, "Oh, we'll try it on that." And he just about got away with it. He just about got away with it. I think people who didn't know him would have actually thought, that was all right. People who knew him would think, that was edgy.
You had to be very at home in your own skin, don't you, to do what you've done and to face up to people like Brian Clough and, that your famous interviews with Muhammad Ali where... Didn't your dad afterwards say, "Why did you let him talk to you like that?"
Why? Well, what's the alternative?
Yeah, quite. What did your dad say to you?
My father said to me, "Why don't you thump him?" I mean, of course I will. I'll thump Ali.
That would have been a ratings winner, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he'd rearrange your son's features, that's for sure, if he did that. No, I think you've got a responsibility when you have guests on your show. I think you have to actually not pamper them. That's not the way at all. But you have to actually try to make them feel relaxed. And that's the first job. The eye contact is terribly important because when they walk downstairs, I don't care who they are, Muhammad Ali, I mention anybody we had on the show, they're actually discomforted. They walk down the stairs toward you with the music playing, you can tell they're uneasy. They're looking around. I've done it 2,000 times. I'm fine, I'm very happy. I'm in my back bedroom, But these people walk on and think, "Christ, what's happening now?" So you have to use that 2 minutes with eye contact. And if you don't have that, and if you don't see a softening, a relaxing, you might be in a bit of trouble. Meg Ryan as an example.
Oh, well, I mean,
you were going to mention her, weren't you? You were going to.
Do you know, all I was going to say was, you amused me when you said people only ever remember the car crashes and that on your tombstone you'll have attacked by emu, snubbed by Meg Ryan.
Yes, not snubbed, attacked by Meg Ryan. Attacked by two birds.
But again, I think that you've got this wonderful balance of warmth and putting people at ease. But when you see perhaps an inconsistency or a slight kind of double standards about someone, for instance, I'm not saying necessarily this was the case with Meg Ryan, but to me it seemed that you weren't happy with her saying she didn't like the spotlight, but then coming on to chat shows and pushing herself forward. And so it's that kind of, you sniff that out, don't you?
So much. I mean, I went to see her in the dressing room beforehand because I'd had a warning from my researchers. She was not happy. And she wasn't happy because Russell Crowe had just finished with her. The love affair had gone because the film was a heap of nonsense, and she knew it was. And contractually, she'd signed on to publish it right the way to the death. So she'd gone through, I don't know, a month of doing interviews of a film she didn't like. So that didn't add to her temper at all. And she made a mistake of actually being angry with the show rather than with herself and the team around her. And so she walked on. She was very rude to a couple of my guests sat with their back to them, and that's which I saw, and I just looked at it and I thought, we're in for a bit of a bumpy ride here. And the only mistake I made with her was I tried to go fishing with her when she said to me, and when I asked her, you've been a journalist, what would you do if you were in my place now? And she said, I wrap it up. I would have wrapped it up, but I didn't. I thought, no, I'm going to get you. And I tried to get some more from her. It wasn't there. She'd lost interest. So that was it. But we don't send each other Christmas cards. I think she behaved in a very unprofessional manner, and I think she knows that too. And, you know, but it's one of the things you have to deal with. I mean, not everybody's going to walk on the show in full control of their senses, you know. They're going to be moody people and drunken people.
People often ask you for your favourite moments, but if there was an interview you could go back to the beginning of and do again?
Do again? Oh, all of them. All of them.
I suppose I'm meaning in a way that you might not have been entirely happy with at the end of it.
Oh, most of them.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You're a perfectionist.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I know in my mind, because that's what you have to do any interview. You have to construct the perfect interview in your mind before you go on. And therefore, you have the pathway, the questions that lead you down that pathway. I've never, except for one, I never ever did an interview where I actually managed to do that. Because either I was distracted by something they said, which led me down there, or else I just forgot, you know.
Coming up, fundraising for Nottingham's John Van Geest Cancer Research Centre and the so-called sexist Helen Mirren interview.
She doesn't like me and I don't like her, but it doesn't stop her doing interviews with me. I've done 4 since.
Just finally, on the chat show guests, I've said culture has changed. You know, clearly it has over the last few decades. And when you interviewed Helen Mirren back in the 70s... Now, I hate to bring this up because we've been getting on so well. Yeah, but it's now listed on YouTube. It's had millions of hits as a kind of example of how attitudes perhaps to women in film have changed.
Yeah. Of course, the 70s.
How do you feel about that?
Well, it was different. I was part of the 70s. You'd find me a 2017 man living in the 70s. There wasn't one.
That's right, indeed, indeed.
And there most certainly wasn't one living in journalism, let me tell you.
But I think, in a way...
And the Granada television, I mean, let me tell you as well, if you're a female, you're looking to get through the door. I mean, I'm not proud of that. I'm just saying that people should understand the mores of the time.
Absolutely.
And the way that, I mean, what's 70s television now? I mean, it's racist, it's extraordinary. Women are hateful figures. Gays, God almighty. Unless they were comedy figures, you couldn't mention the fact, you know. And
I thought, actually, your question was legitimate in that, and this is the one that people hark back to, is basically, because you're so good-looking, does that stop you getting serious roles? Because that's the way it was back then.
Well, exactly, that was a point. But also, too, I have to say that even now, in today's enlightened times, if I were faced with a young actress who walked on wearing a dress which covered very little of her body, as I recall at the time, and also had love and hate stenciled on her hands, and was wearing a big feather boa, right, which she was sort of tickling people with, I don't think I'd treat her as a serious person.
Yes. Do you speak these days? Do you meet at all? Do you talk about those days?
She doesn't like me and I don't like her, but it doesn't stop her doing interviews with me. I've done 4 since. And we laugh about it. We laugh about that time because she understands it, I understand that. It was just one of those things that represented the time we lived in.
Now, you have had prostate cancer. You've chosen to speak out about it in a way that recently David Bowie had the disease, not prostate, as far as I know. Terry Wogan, of course, and they didn't. They kept it more private. Why did you share your diagnosis?
Because I feel a responsibility, and that sounds awful and corny, but I think the only thing that makes sense of being famous, which is stupid, of being famous, is silly, being recognised. Oh, look at Parky. I mean, what?
Doesn't give
what
you
do
a
you
buzz.
expect to do? I mean, what's the reply? I mean, but I understand all of it, and you make a career from it, and I don't complain about it, because, you know, you make a lot of money out of it, you enjoy a wonderful life. My dad worked down a pit, never enjoyed going to work in his life. I've never not enjoyed going to work in my life. That's the big bonus. So therefore, one of the other things that only makes sense of it, or when you lie awake and think, well, what does being famous mean? Is that occasionally you can go through something, a tragedy or whatever it might be, and tell people what it happened to you. You're not laying down a roadway, a path to recovery or solace, anything like that. What you're saying is, look, this happened to me, and this is what I think, if it happens to you, you might benefit from if I tell you. And so that's what decided me. I didn't walk to the newspapers and say, look, I've got prostate cancer, I'd like to do an interview. I was actually spotted by a journalist coming out of my treatment at a hospital in London. And he said to me, I've heard rumours that you're having treatment for cancer. And I said, you can't report that. And he said, no, I can't, sir, not without your permission. And then I looked at him, I said, well, how long before this is on the internet? He said, about 5 minutes. And then, of course, you lost the right to... So I didn't object to that. I mean, he's doing his job, and I've been long enough to know exactly what happened. So from that point on, what I did a deal with the Sun. They paid a vast amount of money to the cancer research, and then they did a wonderful, I have to say, wonderful series about prostate cancer as part of that deal, which included the thing that made all the newspapers, which is my infallible test for prostate cancer, which is to pee against a wall. And that came to me from one of the greatest oncologists in this country. And we were talking one day, he was my doctor, and I said to him, you know, people should go and get themselves, you know, that's the best, is to the doctors. He said, don't bother coming to the doctors, I've got a better test for that. I said, what? He said, if you actually go outside your pub when you've had a few pints, he said, and pee, he said, and you can't hit the wall from 2 feet, come and see me. If you can hit it, don't bother. Now, that story got approbations of how awful, how common, and yet in Scotland, in the North Country, the areas we're trying to target to make men more aware, they're having competitions. So, you know, anything that gets people to take a sensible, a precautionary view of this terrible cancer, men I'm talking about now, and women with breast cancer did exactly the same. They're still the two biggest killers. Anything that helps people toward a decision, I think is worthwhile. And if that's the way, if that's a consequence of fame, I'm all for it.
Mm. And then we have this kind of symmetry that comes into place where you've been the Chancellor of Nottingham-Trent University for several years, sadly retired that post. Was it last year, the year before?
No, it's 2 years ago now.
Yes, and then Nottingham-Trent University has the John Van Gee Centre on its campus that, as we speak, is beavering away, working on a vaccine for prostate cancer and breast cancer.
Well, Bob Rees, the guy who's in charge of it, is a wonderful scientist. And I got very interested in him and his centre when I first got there. And of course, I was very lucky when I went to Nottingham-Trent because I'd never been to university. I didn't know what university life was like. I had a total misconception of dons hurrying down sort of vine-coloured hats on and all that sort
and
of
gowns.
Stuff. And students being, you know, working hard and all that stuff.
Well, you've been to Nottingham.
I've been there, yeah. But the thing about it was, of course, was the transformation that happened when I was there. The building itself, it is the most glorious building now. It's wonderful. And I wouldn't mind spending 3 years, I'll tell you. So that was the start of it all, the transformation. And part of that transformation was, of course, the money that flowed in from the Van Gee Foundation into Bob's research.
Yes.
And as I said, it's significant, and he's done a hell of a good job. So we need the money, you know, that's what the appeal's about, and we should give more and consider ourselves. And more than that, be very aware that these two diseases that they're concentrating on, it's still breast and prostate cancer. And more than half the population, 1 in 2 people, will get it during their lifetime. I'm not saying they're going to die from it at all. Indeed, a lot of prostate cancers nowadays are being treated, they're being managed rather than treated. And so you need to be frightened of what's going to happen to you. And I think that this is a wonderful achievement. I think Nottingham-Trent stand very high in the table of organisations that are doing an extraordinary job.
Yes, and so close to getting something that could change the way the world, I think, responds to treatment of cancers with vaccines.
That's right, exactly. We're all going to get used to a new way about it. It's not going to be so cut and slash and treatments like chemotherapy and radiotherapy, which have very nasty side effects sometimes. It's not about that at all. It's about a different kind of philosophy. You know, the genetic discoveries they're making now are quite remarkable, where you actually profile a person as they're born and take that one out, and that's it gone.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's magical thought, isn't it? We're not quite there yet, but that's the way it's going. And it's very exciting to be part of this research because it's full of extraordinary people that I've met, you know, on my journey. I hate that word, journey. Terrible, isn't it?
The J word, I call it now, yeah.
But on my adventure, and they are remarkable people, and they will beat it. You know? There's no two ways about it, but only beat it if people support the notion.
And you are the patron of the fundraising campaign, and there's this day on Friday, 1 in 2 day. You mentioned the statistic, 1 in 2 people will get cancer.
Yes.
And just for anyone who's not sure about giving money, lots of people give lots of money to good causes.
Yes.
What's different about the money given to the John Van Gee Centre?
Because I'll tell you what, because it's not one of these big, sort of glamorous, and I won't name them, but there are many of them, charities, who have a huge staff and a huge outlay. So a lot of the money that comes in goes out on staffing them. They do a remarkable job, of course they do. What happens in Van Gees is that every kind of penny, farthing that goes in there is used on research. There's no flab, there's no handouts, nothing like that. It goes straight into the research, and that's the important thing, and that's the way we'll beat it.
And we've had the all clear. Again, back to where we started, really, and about your life as an octogenarian. Has it made you have any other thoughts? You know, are you reflecting differently on life, and has it changed you at all?
I'm one of the luckiest people in the world when you think that I left Barnsley. I didn't leave Barnsley Grammar School. I escaped from Barnsley Grammar School. Loved it. With 2 O-levels, walked into a newspaper office and said, I'd give us a job. They said, sit down there, and there's a man there next to you who'll teach you all about it. And 4 years later, I was on the Manchester Guardian, as it was. And then 2 years after that, I was in Fleet Street. And then 2 years after that, I was in television. And 2 years after that, I was doing a talk show on the BBC. I mean, you think about that progress. Now, I was lucky because that time allowed me to do that, as I made my point earlier. Nowadays, young people have to find a different way, and it's a much more difficult thing. But I was lucky because of that, and I just had a charmed life. And I thank God every day that I have. And, you know, I'm very happy from that point of view. I mean, I'm aware now that I'm fading physically in the sense that I haven't got the energy I used to have. But at the same time, I'm writing a book now about my childhood, and I'm finding it difficult to start it, but only because there's so much I wanted to say. And you can't believe, I can't believe that when I start up and write the book and see the colliery where my dad worked, and I went down with him and he frightened me to death and all that. I can't believe that out of that came this very happy life, you know. I cannot. But I was one of the lucky ones. So I'm trying to make that a funny book as much as anything else, and an optimistic book. So the age of 81, I'm 81 in 2 weeks' time, I shall, the message is he remains optimistic and at ease with this fellow man.
Good. And
none of that's true.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Sir Michael.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you very much.
Not at all. My pleasure. Thank you.